There are things men say that might sound harmless on the surface, but underneath they reveal everything you need to know about how he sees you, how he values connection, and whether he's capable of real emotional depth. And as women, we've all been there. That moment when a man says something that doesn't quite sit right in your spirit. You feel it in your body before you can even explain it with words. That small, sharp pull in your chest, that soft voice inside whispering, "This isn't right." But because we've been taught to be accommodating, understanding, and endlessly patient, we often silence that voice. We rationalize, we give the benefit of the doubt, we explain away the unease. We think, maybe I'm overreacting, and in doing so, we sometimes walk ourselves deeper into emotional confusion and self-betrayal. Today, I want to talk about 7 things men say that are not just red flags. They're spiritual warnings, words that reveal entitlement, emotional immaturity, or an inability to meet you in your feminine power. If you can learn to hear these red flags clearly, not with fear, but with clarity, you'll never again waste your softness on someone who doesn't know how to honor it. So before we dive in, I want you to take a breath and remember this. You are not here to prove your worth to anyone. You are here to remember it. If that message resonates, take a moment to subscribe, not just to this channel, but to the version of yourself that no longer tolerates confusion disguised as love. Let's begin. 1. I'm just not ready for anything serious right now. It's one of the most common phrases women hear today, especially in a culture that glorifies detachment and emotional casualness. At first, it sounds honest, maybe even respectful, but the danger lies in how easily women with deep hearts misinterpret this sentence. Because we think if we give it enough time, enough care, enough understanding, he'll eventually change his mind. What this phrase truly means, though, is that he wants the benefits of emotional closeness without the accountability of commitment. He's saying, I want to feel seen, held, and validated, but only when it's convenient for me. And the reason this becomes such a red flag isn't because he's a villain. It's because he's telling you exactly what emotional bandwidth he has. The problem starts when we refuse to listen. The woman rooted in her feminine worth knows how to hear truth, even when it's inconvenient. She doesn't try to turn potential into reality. She doesn't take a man's not ready as an invitation to heal him. She takes it as information. Think about queen archetypes, women like Cleopatra, or even fictional figures like Daenerys Targaryen. They carried power and passion, but they never begged for readiness. The energy of the queen says, I'm not here to convince you to meet me. I'm here to choose who already stands at my level. The truth is, many women chase potential readiness because deep down they hope that nurturing someone will prove their value. But that belief is rooted in scarcity. You cannot nurture a man into emotional maturity. You can only meet one who already honors the depth you bring. Ask yourself this: when a man tells you he's not ready, what part of you feels the urge to wait? What wound in you believes that love must come with patience, pain, and proving? The moment you stop negotiating your worth with someone's readiness is the moment you reclaim your feminine peace. Because the right man doesn't need convincing. He's already building a space for you to feel safe, loved, and chosen. 2. You're too emotional. There are few sentences more subtle yet more damaging than this one. When a man says you're too emotional, he's not just commenting on your reaction. He's attempting to redefine your nature. It's a phrase used to shrink women who feel deeply. It's how emotionally unavailable people defend themselves from intimacy. Because when someone can't handle emotional honesty, they label it as too much. But here's the truth. Your emotions are not weakness. They're data. They're wisdom. They are the sacred language of your feminine intuition, the radar that senses danger, dishonor, or disconnect before logic ever can. The most dangerous thing you can do as a woman is to believe that your sensitivity makes you less powerful, because in reality, it's what gives you foresight, empathy, and connection, qualities the modern world desperately needs more of. When he calls you too emotional, what he's really saying is, I can't handle the truth that you're your emotions reveal. Maybe he doesn't want to confront his own shame. Maybe he doesn't want to be held accountable for the energy he brings into the relationship. Maybe your clarity makes him uncomfortable because it exposes where he's still hiding from himself. Remember this: feminine energy isn't chaos, it's creation. It's the same energy that brings life into the world, heals others, and transforms pain into art. When you suppress it to make someone else comfortable, you start dimming the very essence that makes you magnetic. Psychologically, women who internalize too emotional often develop self-doubt around their intuitive responses. They second-guess what they feel, replay conversations in their heads, and apologize for having needs. That constant self-correction erodes your confidence over time, and that's exactly how you lose touch with your inner compass. To reclaim it, you have to stop seeking emotional permission. Stop waiting for someone to validate the way you feel before you honor it. The feminine spirit is meant to move like water, fluid, expressive, intuitive. The masculine structure is supposed to hold space for that movement, not shame it. When a man tries to silence your emotions, he's revealing that he can't yet hold the depth of your ocean. And that's okay, because it's not your job to make your waves smaller. It's his job to learn how to swim. I want you to reflect on something. How many times have you bitten your tongue to appear cool, easygoing, or unbothered, when inside you were drowning in unspoken truth? And what did that silence cost you, not just in love, but in your relationship with yourself? To live in your full feminine power means to express your truth with softness, but without apology. Because the woman who feels deeply is not too emotional. She's simply no longer available for shallow love. 3. My ex was crazy. It's said so casually, so often, that it almost sounds like harmless small talk. But listen carefully, because this one reveals far more than it conceals. When a man speaks negatively about his ex, especially with contempt or mockery, what he's showing you is his emotional maturity level, and often that level is dangerously low. There's a difference between sharing what went wrong and labeling someone crazy. The latter is not reflection, it's deflection. It means he hasn't processed, taken accountability, or learned from his past. Instead, he's repackaging his own unhealed patterns as someone else's fault. When a man calls his ex crazy, he's telling you how he'll talk about you when you no longer give him what he wants. He's telling you that he lacks empathy for a woman's emotional experience, that instead of understanding complexity, he simplifies it into blame. Emotionally intelligent men can describe the past with compassion. They can say, "We had our differences," or "We both had growing to do." They don't need to dehumanize someone to feel righteous. So when a man resorts to this phrase, what he's really communicating is that he still defines women through the lens of his own ego. And here's the deeper truth. Many women ignore this red flag because it makes them feel special. When he says, "My ex was crazy, but you're different," it sounds like a compliment. But what he's actually doing is planting a seed, a narrative where he is always the victim and every woman before you was unstable. One day, if you dare to express your boundaries, you risk being added to that same story. Ask yourself this: why does part of you want to be the exception in a man's pattern instead of questioning why he even has one? The queen energy never competes with the ghosts of the past. She observes, she listens, she knows that how a man speaks about other women is how he values the feminine as a whole. A man who honors women, even the ones who hurt him, is a man capable of emotional evolution. But a man who needs to call his ex crazy just to make himself look sane is still living at a level of emotional survival, not growth. You don't need to fix that. You just need to see it clearly and choose peace over potential. 4. You're different from other girls. At first, it sounds flattering, maybe even magical. You feel seen, chosen, unique. But beneath the surface, this statement carries a subtle poison, because what he's really saying is, "I like you because you're not like the rest of your gender. And that's not a compliment, that's conditioning. It divides women. It praises you by putting others down. It trains you to chase male approval by distancing yourself from the feminine collective. And that's exactly how many women lose touch with their feminine essence, by trying to be the exception rather than the embodiment. In psychology, this dynamic feeds what's called the cool girl archetype. She's effortlessly chill, never jealous, never needy, never emotional. She drinks whiskey, laughs at offensive jokes, and pretends to love everything he loves. And though she's admired for her composure, she's also quietly starving because she's performing rather than receiving. This phrase often appears early in relationships. It's a hook that invites you to feel superior, but the cost is authenticity. When you start molding yourself into what makes you different, you begin abandoning the parts of you that make you real. Think about women in history who refused to shrink their femininity to gain respect. Women like Maya Angelou, who carried her softness with power, or Princess Diana, who led with compassion even when the world tried to control her image. They weren't different from other women. They were deeply, fully women, and that's what made them unforgettable. True femininity doesn't compete. It radiates. It allows other women to shine without dimming its own light. So, when a man tells you you're not like other girls, the wise response isn't flattery, it's curiosity. Why does he feel the need to compare? What does he believe about women that makes individuality sound like rebellion? Ask yourself, have you ever felt pressured to prove that you're the better choice by being less emotional, less expressive, or less feminine? The truth is, the highest form of feminine energy is unity, not exception. It's standing in your authenticity so firmly that you give other women permission to do the same. The moment you stop striving to be the exception, you become the standard. 5. You're overthinking it. This one cuts deep because it often comes right at the moment when your intuition is whispering that something's off. It's a dismissal dressed as calm, a way to gaslight your clarity without ever raising his voice. The phrase, "you're overthinking it," tells you that your perception, your sacred feminine insight, is inconvenient. It's meant to make you doubt yourself, to disconnect you from the very instincts that protect you. In reality, what most women call overthinking is usually under-trusting, not trusting themselves enough to honor what they already know. When your intuition senses something, it's not paranoia, it's pattern recognition. Your nervous system, your empathy, your body, they all pick up subtle cues long before your mind catches up. And the men who use this phrase often rely on your desire to appear reasonable. Because women are taught to value harmony, we often silence our intuition to keep peace, even when that peace costs our power. But your peace is not supposed to come from suppressing truth. It comes from aligning with it. This red flag shows up in relationships, yes, but also in friendships and workplaces. Anytime someone tries to make you feel irrational for noticing energy shifts, inconsistencies, or emotional withdrawal, that's manipulation, not logic. The ancient Greeks believed intuition was a form of divine knowledge. The Stoics wrote about oikeiosis, the inner sense of knowing what's natural and right for your soul. That's the wisdom your intuition carries. And in feminine psychology, intuition is the bridge between the conscious and the unconscious, the part of you that sees what words cannot express. To reclaim that, you must learn to stand by your insights, even when others call you dramatic. Because every time you override your intuition to appear chill, you teach your nervous system to distrust your truth. Ask yourself, how many times have you sensed something was wrong, ignored it, and later realized your first feeling was right? And why do you still call that overthinking instead of intuition? The woman who learns to trust her gut becomes unshakable. She moves through the world with quiet confidence, not because she controls everything, but because she listens to everything. Her mind and her body work in harmony, not opposition. And that alignment becomes her protection. So when a man says, "You're overthinking it," what he really means is, "Stop seeing through me." And that's exactly when you should keep watching, not doubting. Because your intuition doesn't lie, it just whispers. 6. I don't believe in labels. At first, it sounds modern, free, open-minded. You might even think it's a sign of emotional sophistication, a rejection of outdated norms. But the deeper you look, the more you realize this phrase is often used not to create freedom, but to avoid responsibility. When a man says he doesn't believe in labels, what he's really saying is, I want the comfort of connection without the clarity of commitment. He wants to enjoy intimacy, emotional access, and your nurturing energy, without ever having to be accountable for how his actions affect you. This red flag hides behind intellectual language. It sounds like independence, but it's actually fear. Fear of being defined, fear of being depended on, fear of being known. Here's the truth. Commitment isn't a cage, it's a container. It gives love a shape. It gives emotional energy a direction. Without it, your heart keeps pouring into something that never becomes anything. The feminine energy, in its mature form, craves depth. It doesn't chase endless situationships, it wants to be met, not managed. So when he says, I don't believe in labels, it's a subtle way of keeping power. He gets to decide when it's romantic, when it's casual, and when it's convenient. Meanwhile, you're left in the fog, overanalyzing every gesture, wondering where you stand. But clarity is love. Confusion is not. A relationship that cannot be named cannot be nurtured. Philosopher Simone de Beauvoir once wrote that freedom without responsibility is not freedom at all. It's evasion. The same truth applies here. A man who avoids definition isn't living in emotional freedom. He's living in avoidance. Ask yourself this. Why does part of you find mystery attractive? What makes uncertainty feel like intensity? Because often, women mistake emotional inconsistency for passion. We tell ourselves, if it feels uncertain, it must be real. But love isn't supposed to make you anxious. Real connection calms your nervous system. It doesn't activate it. The feminine heart blossoms in safety. Safety doesn't mean boredom. It means knowing you're valued without having to guess. So when a man tells you he doesn't believe in labels, don't try to convince him otherwise. Just smile softly and walk toward the kind of love that knows your name. Because you don't need another man who's allergic to clarity. You need one who's brave enough to claim what he feels. 7. You're lucky to have me. This one is subtle but powerful because it reveals a deep imbalance in self-worth. When a man feels the need to remind you that you're lucky, what he's really doing is projecting his insecurity onto you. He wants to feel superior, not equal. He wants admiration, not intimacy. And here's the paradox. Truly high-value men never have to say this, because their presence alone, their steadiness, their character, their consistency speaks for itself. It's only the ones who doubt their own worth who need to assert it out loud. This statement is emotional arrogance disguised as confidence. It's the language of control, a way to make you believe you're the one being chosen, instead of realizing that love is supposed to be mutual choosing. When you hear, "You're lucky to have me," remember this. The woman rooted in her feminine energy knows that she brings something priceless to the table. Softness, intuition, emotional depth, grace under pressure, and the quiet strength to hold love together when life gets heavy. That's not luck. That's power. You're not lucky to be loved by a man who uses comparison to inflate himself. You're selective to have chosen someone worthy, and if he can't see that, he's not aligned with your energy. Think about women throughout history who understood their worth long before the world did. Women like Eleanor Roosevelt, who said, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." That statement wasn't just political, it was spiritual. A man who needs to remind you that you're lucky to have him is often terrified that one day you'll wake up and realize he doesn't deserve you. And in that moment, he's right. Ask yourself, how often have you stayed in situations where you were being made to feel grateful for the bare minimum? And what would your life look like if you stopped thanking people for giving you what you already deserve? The mature feminine doesn't compete for attention. She commands respect through presence. She doesn't chase, she attracts. She doesn't settle for crumbs because she knows she is the feast. So when someone tries to make you feel lucky, remind yourself, luck is random. Worth is intentional. And a woman who knows her worth doesn't need to be told she's lucky. She already knows she's a blessing. Every red flag begins as a whisper, a single sentence, a subtle moment where your intuition tenses and your spirit feels smaller instead of seen. And the truth is, most women don't ignore red flags because they're naive. They ignore them because they're compassionate, because they believe love can heal what's broken in others. But the highest form of compassion is discernment, the ability to see truth clearly and still choose peace. Because love that costs your self-worth isn't love, it's self-abandonment disguised as devotion. The journey of the modern feminine woman isn't about being guarded, it's about being grounded. It's about listening to your intuition with the same authority that you once gave to others. It's about standing in your softness without letting anyone mistake it for weakness. You are not too much. You are not asking for too much. You are simply remembering that you deserve exactly what you give. So the next time you hear one of these sentences, take a breath. Don't argue, don't explain, just observe. Because the woman who can see clearly no longer chases closure, she chooses peace. If this message spoke to your heart, subscribe, not just to this channel, but to your power, because the journey back to your feminine essence begins every time you choose yourself. And if you ever doubt your worth again, remember this truth. You are not here to be tolerated, you are here to be treasured.